Both Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali can be explored through the theoretical lens of John Locke's theory of enlightenment. John Locke states the natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man. It could be argued that both Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali strongly agree with this theory due to their desire for destroying the shackles America still used against African Americans to oppress them. This essay will explore different commentaries on the black empowerment through revolution, the opposing and supporting arguments for a separate nation to America, and the effects of colonialism within Vietnam and within America. Institutional racism in the 1960s can be compared to race relations in colonial Africa, as both institutions see the imposition of white culture and the political and economical exploitation of blacks. Carmichael and Hamilton highlight this, stating that black Americans stand as colonial subjects to the white society. Thus, institutional racism has another name, colonialism. This imperialism is seen politically as whites dominate the political sphere in both the USA and Africa, imposing their own values upon African and African American cultures. This governmental infliction can be read through the lens of Locke, as he argues that the fundamental role of legislative power is the preservation of society and, as far as it will consist with the public good of every person in it. In contrast, white governments do little to benefit their black communities. They exploit black groups economically, using their resources and leave them dependent on white society. This is damaging, as the reliance ensures that the white rule will always be necessary in order to remain stable. Malcolm X and the Black Power movement were inspired by the revolutions in Africa, Asia, and Latin America against the colonialism that Americans were opposing on them, because they are black revolutions. Within Malcolm X's message to the grassroots, he comments all revolutions that are going on in Asia and Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. This is a catalyst for revolution in America and an inspiration for the African American people to rise up against the legislative authority of the white man. He continues by stating a revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. Malcolm X is provoking Locke's white superior power by stating that the African American people are prepared for bloodshed as a result of a revolution, but the outcome of the revolution must be a nation and independence.
The basis of independence. And the only way they could get it was bloodshed. First, what is a revolution? Sometimes I'm inclined to believe that many of our people are using this word revolution loosely, without taking careful consideration what this word actually means and what its historic characteristics are.
Similarly, the indirect rule of local blacks in colonial governments in the USA are damaging to black society. Although these positions may appear to show black empowerment, in reality they are used to hush black voices. They suggest racial power progress and liberation, although the positions are actually just white puppets. These occupations therefore create tension within black communities as society feels disillusioned by the lack of support from their own leader. Malcolm X heavily criticizes the non-violent African Americans and makes the association of being a house Negro, which was the term given to African Americans who worked in the plantation owner's house during the slavery era. Malcolm X comments how the house Negro identified himself with his master more than his master identified with himself. Malcolm X is raising the argument that the African Americans who are too timid to be part of a revolution are house Negroes, whereas Malcolm X associates himself as being a field Negro. They are the people who are prepared to retaliate against the oppression of the white superior power, yet he comments that civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. are 20th century Uncle Toms to keep you and me in check, to keep us under control, keep us passive and peaceful and non-violent. This gives the impression that the white superior power still holds the reins over the African American population, and therefore this rejects Locke's governmental theories of an individual's right not to be under the will or legislative authority of man. Malcolm X believes that they are still the people holding the Black Power movement back from sparking a revolution. That's Tom's making you passive. He strongly believes someone has taught you to suffer peacefully. Further, within The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin comments how the power of the white world is threatened when a black man refuses to accept the white world's definitions. Therefore, agrees with Malcolm X that black people or Uncle Tom should reject the superior authority of the white man and ally themselves with their own people. The idea of African American people uniting against the white authority can also be seen within Rap Brown's Die Nigger Die political autobiography. He is greatly against the Vietnam War, similarly to Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, and channels Locke's theory by referring to the notion that black folks ain't got no business shooting other black folk for white folk. This suggests that a man, especially a black man, should be free from any superior authority or court ordering him to kill people of his own greed. Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Rap Brown all strongly opposed the Vietnam War because it provoked the idea that America was seeking colonialism. It can be argued that it was clearly seen America was dominating Vietnam in all possible ways by controlling South Vietnam's government. America claimed their control in Vietnam was completely justifiable because it was for America's own good as a result of them believing it was not able to protect itself from communism and, ironically, a superior power. It can be argued that America was extending its powers from the home to Vietnam, where the Vietnamese would face the same oppression as African Americans at home. With this in mind, it strongly suggests that Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and Rat Brown opposed the Vietnam War because of the idea that American oppression would spread to the Vietnamese. Therefore, they would agree with Locke's theory of national liberty of man to be free from any superior power on earth. As a result, Vietnam should be free from America's power.
Ali defeated Foley by a knockout in the 7th round. Immediately thereafter, he walked into the teeth of a monumental decision. He was drafted, and then he refused induction on the grounds of his religious convictions on war.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality, raped and killed my mother and father. What, I'm going to shoot them for what? How can I go shoot them? Them little poor little black people, little babies and children and women. How can I shoot them poor people? That would just take me to jail.
Locke's theory can be applied to Carl Lightfoot's argument that socialism would express the interests of black people better than a black-led society that would be based on capitalism. This suggests he opposes Malcolm X's call for revolution, which would eventually lead to separatism from America. However, James Baldwin counter-argues what Lightfoot stated by arguing that people are not, for example, terribly anxious to be equal, but they love the idea of being superior. Both black and white Americans want authority and power, but a minority of the public strive for equality. Therefore, Baldwin undermines Lightfoot's ideology of a socially separate nation. He believes Malcolm X's and the Nation of Islam's ideology of a separate nation is a fantasy, and comments, the United States would never surrender territory unless it found it impossible to hold it, unless, that is, the United States were to be reduced as a world power. It creates the unrealistic expectation of an independent nation free from the legislative authority of the white man. This fed the African-American dream of gaining power and the individual freedom from an oppressive nation which Baldwin believes is unachievable. The theory created by John Locke that the natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man can be applied to the icons Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. They are extremely prominent figures within the civil rights movement, predominantly associated with the Black Power and the Nation of Islam. The radical ideologies of the Nation of Islam, such as separatism and the call for revolution, were projected by the great speaking of Malcolm X. However, critical writers like James Baldwin questions the attainment of land for the separate nation and the success of the independent nation. Other writers, such as Claude Lightfoot, believed the only way for the independent nation to succeed was if it accepted socialism and rejected the white capitalist politics. Therefore, they would detach themselves from the superior power of America, as Locke states that it is the natural liberty of man is to be free. The only way Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam thought fit to remain free was to create a separate nation through revolution. Rat Brown comments on how he would not comply with the white authority to be deployed in Vietnam, due to his opinion that he would not kill a black man for a white person. Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and Rat Brown all greatly opposed the Vietnam War due to the idea that America was practicing to an extent colonialism. They did not agree with America exerting their powers within another country and oppressing the natural liberties of other men. Overall, both Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X were strong advocates for destroying the superior power of America because they believed that the natural liberty of man is to be free.